Ah. All right, we are live. Jessica's coming back in, and I'm going to move this back over to Village of Trumansburg. Good.
Okay, let's see. We have 1, 2. We are all here. Tammy and Vicky. All right, let me start the recording. Okay, so I will call to order this first monthly meeting of the new year. To order, everyone is present. Happy New Year, everybody. Welcome to 2021. 11 days in. It's always interesting times. First item on the agenda is, are there any changes to the agenda? Any additions or deletions from anyone on the board? I do have one item to add, which I'll add under the mayor's report. It's a resolution to allow for some grant applications, which I'll explain when we get there. Anything else that we'd like to add or delete from the agenda? Okay, item number 3 is our first public comment period, privilege of the floor. And other than the fire chief and Ann, I don't see any members of the public, so they'll certainly, unless Matt, unless you had something you wanted to add, not fire related. Okay, and we will move right along to item number 4, which is reports from representatives. Ann, I see you in the list. If you would like to kick us off, we'd be much obliged.
Sure, I can do that. Let's see, I'll start with sales tax. For November, the sales tax overall was down 14.09%. And year to date, we were down 12.07%. The smaller municipalities were down in November 14.09 on average, and year to date minus 9.38%. And I frequently like to just remind folks again, to remind other people to buy local, and more of your tax money will go here. Some portion of your online purchases, we do get the sales tax, but we don't get for them from every place you buy for. The biggest news I'm sure that everybody wants to hear about is vaccination and testing updates. So as far as testing, from the last time I was on here or here at this meeting, I believe we talked about the new testing site down in Ithaca on Tioga Street. And since then, all of the testing sites have gone to, I believe most, if not all of them, because there's now 3 testing sites. There's one at the hospital now too, if folks didn't hear about that. And so I think all 2 or 3 of them are going to the saliva test, which is a lot easier for most people and most preferable. I know several of you have had the nasal swabs, which is not pleasant, to put the least. And then vaccinations. So right now, Cayuga Health Department or Cayuga Health Systems is in charge of almost all the vaccinations. And was decided by the state of New York. So we don't have any control over that. And we don't have any control over of course, their announcements that come out. So Friday, this governor announced that phase 1B was going to be opened up for those folks to get vaccines. Unfortunately, that didn't coincide with timing of getting additional vaccines. So also there, I should backtrack a little bit. Also today, we found out that Kinney Drugs is also going to be able to administer the vaccine for those 75 and over. So just that population is the information we have so far. And CVS is helping administer the vaccines to people in nursing home settings. They're going right there to do that. And so Kinney's drugs don't have the vaccine. The Cayuga Hospital or Cayuga Health System has administered pretty much all of their vaccines so far to phase 1A participants. That doesn't mean that all of those people have gotten it, but that means they're distributing it as fast as they can. So those are the most of the update, I believe, on the vaccines and testing. Our legislative chair, Leslyn McBean-Claiborne, did issue a statement on behalf of the legislature condemning the rioting and attacks at the Capitol in DC. And speaking of our legislative chair, we did vote at our last legislative meeting last week to our new chair and vice chair, which is actually the same people. So it's Leslyn McBean-Claiborne will continue as our legislative chair, and Shauna Black will be our vice chair. And then we're working on, or they are working on committee assignments with our input. And so those should be finalized soon. But it's looking like right now, at least for me, I'll probably be chairing our planning and energy and environmental committee and vice chair of our workforce diversity and inclusion committee. But I'll give you an update next time. So there's lots of other stuff going on, but I would say those are the highlights.
Great, thank you, Ann. Any questions from anyone on the board for Ann? Jessica looks like she wants to ask.
I was trying to find my mute button, but I had my OneNote in front of myself there. Ann, where are we with the survey for the dark fiber?
I haven't had an update for that in a while, so I'll look into that and see where we are with that and get back to you guys.
Okay.
Thanks for asking that, Jessica.
Sure.
And Ann, I'm just curious. I can certainly ask Frank, but since you're keeping track of it, I'm curious what the next vaccine phase is going to include. I know the original plan from the state had 5 tranches of vaccination, which they've since subdivided into 1A, 1B, and 1C. But the folks who are in 1B eligible as of today were in the original phase 2 that the state released. So I'm wondering if they're still on track for the next phase to be that next group that the state had originally planned. I think it was folks 65 and older instead of 75 and older, as well as folks under age 65 if they have comorbidities. I'm just curious if the health department has any clarification on that. Not as far as timing, but just who's going to be in that group.
You mean beyond what the state is saying?
No, just in terms of what modifications might have been handed down since the tier system has been modified slightly. If they have any visibility as to who's going to be in the next tier after 1B, whenever that might be.
Okay. All right. I'm going to attend our Health and Human Services Committee tomorrow morning, and I'll ask Frank, so he'll be there, and I'll send you guys that info.
Great, thank you. Anything else for Ann? If not, we will then move on to our consent agenda, which, unless there's a need to remove anything from it for tonight, will contain an approval of our minutes from our December meeting, December 14th of 2020. We're going to reapprove or I guess it's not really an approval. We're going to affirm the choice of flag that is available to be flown for the month of February. And we're going to approve our abstract of claims, which I will read just to keep the record keepers happy. Abstract of claims includes $164,702.79 from the general fund. It contains as well $10,321.65 for EMS billing, $21,659.96 from the water fund, $166,248.10 from the sewer fund, which includes a bond payment, $3,966.42 from trust and agency. So with that, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda and the items therein.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor of approving the consent agenda and its items, please say aye.
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 I with a caveat. Can the minutes please reflect my full name of Jessica moving forward and not Jess? But it doesn't need to be changed for last meeting.
Duly noted.
Thank you.
Any opposed to the adoption of the consent agenda? Any abstentions? Okay, hearing none, the consent agenda is passed with a note for formal names in the minutes, please. Item number 6, board member reports, starting with myself. We still have yet to find an appropriate time to meet with the winner of the 2020 last year's 2020 Thomas Ferretti Award for Community Service. We're still efforting a time to make that happen, hopefully in the next couple of weeks. So we'll make the announcement of who the lucky winner is once the award has been presented. A very quick update. Nothing new has transpired with respect to the police reform initiative since our December meeting. We do have a meeting scheduled for this Thursday evening for members of from the local community, from the local business community rather, as well as representatives of a couple of not-for-profits, the Rotary, the library, members from the town of Ulysses, members from the Trumansburg School District, and a representative of the Jacksonville Community Association. So this is much more of the organizational meeting version of what Keith and Chief and I have presented in the last couple of meetings, which was geared towards individual residents and community members. This is now more organizational. I expect we'll have at least one, possibly 2 more meetings of various types. And then sometime between now and hopefully the March meeting, we will begin putting together a draft of the deliverable of the report that the state wants to see, which will, in conversations with Jason Molino from the county, there hasn't been any guidance whatsoever from the state as to what this report needs to look like. So the idea is basically to outline the process we followed in keeping with Executive Order 203, the types of meetings that were held, the types of, or the numbers of individuals and organizations that were represented, an itemization of some kind. I don't know if it'll be as boring as a bullet point sheet of comments, but something along those lines with respect to questions and comments that were fielded, and then action items moving forward. I think it's the action items moving forward part that will generate the most potential for discussion among this board as to what we should look to do, and that'll be the part we will need feedback from this board as to what we want to include in that section to be submitted to the state, and of course following through on it after the fact. So I'm hoping, and I haven't coordinated with Keith yet as to who's going to actually do the drafting, but I'm hoping to have a draft to circulate to the board sometime in that mid to late February timeframe, so we can get an idea of what's included as far as the the process and the feedback, there won't be anything to comment on per se, that it is what it is. But the action item portion will be certainly something we'll need input on. Very brief update on the LED streetlight project that is moving at the speed of government. It is moving forward, but it is moving forward. It's not stagnant. The various agreements that we've authorized to be signed have been gotten to the appropriate parties. There is actually going to be a Zoom conference with NYPA here in the next week or two to talk about the smart light software package and what it can include and what it entails and how much control it'll give somebody over street light brightness and so forth. So I'll keep everyone posted on that. The one item that I wanted to add to the agenda in the Dropbox, there are two resolutions. Hopefully everyone can see it. There is a resolution that says type 2 seeker resolution and another one that says supporting resolution EPG template. So DEC and the EFC. So if you're not familiar, we know DEC is, we know who DEC is. EFC is the Environmental Facilities Corporation, which is the funding arm of the state for rural water and wastewater management. They are putting together a joint grant application. This one was brought to my attention by MRB. It is an engineering planning grant specifically for engineering, mapping, and studying of I&I, inflow and infiltration mitigation. So because DEC is so well aware of our I&I issues at our sewer plant, MRB, a lot of initials going on in the sentence, MRB is of the opinion that we rate or rank quite high in the list of potential municipalities who could win this grant. It's a $30,000 grant with a 20% match. So that means we would need to come up with 6% or $6,000 rather, which we do have in the sewer fund balance. And it would basically give, it would empower MRB, or it would pay MRB to do the next step in the study, which is based on what they found through the televising of the sewer lines and all of the study and work that they've done so far, to identify the areas that have the likelihood of high I&I input, what would need to be done to mitigate that. And so it would be the study that would inform, basically tell us how much it's going to cost and where the pipes need to go and what work needs to be done. The cost for MRB, in this case, to do the grant application is $2,000. That is below our procurement number. So I have below our procurement number that requires board authorization. So I have authorized MRB to proceed. And what we need tonight, unless the board disagrees, is the adoption of these two resolutions. One, the type 2 seeker resolution just says that this is a type 2 action that does not require a formal seeker review process because it's simply a grant application for a study. And then the second resolution is the resolution itself to apply for the grant. So before we offer those up, are there any questions or comments or clarification that anybody wants on that 90 seconds of word salad that I just spat out?
So I noticed in the resolution, not the seeker one, that there was the hereby appropriated from the sewer fund was highlighted. I don't know if there was anything more to say about that. You mentioned that there's balance there for that, so not too worried.
Yeah, the MRB, when they put together the template for us, was assuming that it was going to come from the sewer fund since it deals with I&I, but wanted to highlight that section if for some reason we wanted to take the money from somewhere else. Any other thoughts or comments? I will, just as an aside, say that this is since it is a DEC/EFC grant, it does not preclude us from applying for other grants that are coming along and that have been announced in the last week. particularly CDBG, Community Development Block Grants is one. And of course, New York State still has their annual round of grant funding, which has been announced, even though we don't know what the budget is going to look like for the state exactly this year. So if there is anything along those lines, and I'm thinking sidewalks, those kinds of things, we would still be able to apply for those other grants if we chose to, or if we have the opportunity to. If there's no other question or comment, and certainly jump in if something comes to mind, I would entertain a motion to adopt. Which order should we do this in? I would entertain a motion to adopt the supporting resolution to apply for the wastewater infrastructure engineering planning grant. We'll do that one first.
So moved.
Second.
Any additional comment or discussion? Hearing none, then all in favor of adopting the resolution to apply for this grant, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Then I would next entertain a motion to adopt, and I'll just read this because it is seeker, adopt a resolution stating that this grant application is a type 2 action under seeker. Whereas the Village of Trumansburg Board of Trustees is completing an application through the New York State Consolidated Funding Application under New York State Department of Environmental Conservation in conjunction with the New York State Environmental Facilities Corporation for the preparation of an engineering report. Therefore, be it resolved that the Village Board does hereby classify the above referenced action to be a type 2 action under 6 NYCRR section 617.5 C27 of the State Environmental Quality Review Regulations. And be it further resolved that type 2 actions are not subject to further review under part 617 of seeker regulations. And be it finally resolved that the Village Board, in making this classification, has satisfied the procedural requirements under seeker and directs this resolution to be placed in the file on this action. And I would so move. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any additional comments, questions? Yeah, Tim,
Did you just move that?
I sure did.
Okay, just checking.
Any other comments or questions?
Just to point out that you said Trumansburg Board of Trustees, which should be amended in the writing.
How so?
Well, it says Trumansburg Village Board. I mean, it's a small detail, but what
I
you
see.
said is correct and what is written is incorrect.
Okay, yeah, I'll make sure it says what I said. Any other comments or questions? All right, hearing none, then all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Excellent. I will keep everyone apprised of where we land in the application process, and hopefully that'll. The deadline for the application is in February, and I'm not sure when the award is going to be made, probably summertime. So hopefully that'll be something that we'll be able to get them working on later in the year.
Is there any update on the other funding we've been chasing for feels like years?
For drainage,
Yeah.
the last update I had was that DASNY has approved, or we finished DASNY's review process. And now we're just waiting for the governor to unfreeze that funding. All of that has been frozen by the executive branch until further notice. So we're waiting for that to be released. Hopefully for the spring construction season.
I had a question on the police reform part. If we can switch back to that for a second. I know we had talked at one point about releasing some of the opening comments for some of those meetings. I don't know where we stand on that piece.
Yeah, excuse me. That is also something we're working on. What I want to do is consolidate all of the, is to release the video that we recorded and then consolidate all of the comments that we have so far. So it's actually going to be, I think it'll end up being a lot of what's included in the report to the state. But we just have to collate all of that. So I need to find a free minute somewhere to meet with Keith and Chief and kind of collate all of that and then put it in some type of a document format. And then we can add to it as additional comments come in. But there's a fair bit. And I think with our having a meeting Thursday, I think it makes sense to collate 2 meetings with residents plus meetings with organizations and have that be kind of the initial rough draft, if you will, of comments received so far. And then post all of that along with the opening kind of video intro that we have recorded, so that anyone who hasn't attended a meeting or is curious but won't be able to attend a future meeting can at least see what's been discussed, and then they can review the questions and comments. And if they see something that, if they have a question or comment that they don't see has been asked, then they can certainly submit it and we can add it to the list.
Great.
That's it for my report. So I will hand it off to Jessica for fire and TACC.
Great. And we have here with us also Chief Taylor. So I think, Chief, I'll just start with the notes that I took, and then if you'd like to fill in any blanks, I'll invite you to share what you've got. And I think starting off with some kind of nice news, which is that we have all the N95 masks that we need as of last week's check-in, and that there is also an anonymous donor who gave some N95 masks. So it's nice to know that our team is staying safe. And they are part of the 1B group vaccination, though they do have to apply along with general public for a vaccination appointments. So it's not something that they can expedite other than getting a slot done, which is fascinating. And other good news is that the report is we're tracking well on budget. All gear is ordered for 2021 and the pickup truck is done. There's still some money in the building budget, and so Chief is just reviewing what needs might be met, specifically maybe with windows and flooring. And there was huge success for the letters to Santa. There's an article by our local Laura Gallup that was in the December 30th Tompkins Weekly. If someone hasn't seen that yet and wants to read it, they distributed the most presents ever of 178, and it was really a treat to A, read the article, and B, and to witness the fire company meeting. It's so much effort and to a direct touch to the public that really brought some reward, and some good donations still rolling in. So it's beneficial, and it also generates support for the fire company. Chief is also investigating the electric bill with NYSEG because it seems a little high. And Vicki, I understand you're helping to fix the tax exempt status on that. So I'm just checking in with you to see where we are with that.
We don't pay sales tax. The taxes that we pay are like governmental taxes. There's no way, I don't believe there's a way to get rid of them.
Has that been asked directly? Have you asked that directly?
We asked that a couple years ago when I started the project with Ben.
Okay.
The energy. So I guess maybe that would be something that Matt would want to do, is find out from Ben how the energy, I don't know how to do that report. I've never worked with it, but we keep track of the firehouse's electric and natural gas. And we've been doing that for 3 years, Ben.
Sounds about right. Yeah, Jess, if you want to get in touch with me, I can get a report for that from the past couple of years at least. maybe that will be helpful. The other thing I can say is we did have an audit through, I can't remember the acronym, USA something or other, which is through NICOM, and they look at a lot of our bills and kind of make sure that we're doing all the right things. And I think they flagged a couple small bills where maybe we were paying taxes, but they didn't flag anything else regarding fire as far as I recall. And I can try and dig that up for you too.
No, that's correct, Ben. And I took care of those. It was the two school signs that we paid
That's
for.
right.
It was very small, but the other taxes are not sales tax that we're exempt from.
Okay.
You're talking about the NICEAG bill, Jess. Are you talking about on the NICEAG bill where there's a section that just says electricity taxes and surcharges?
Yeah.
Yeah, as long as county sales tax doesn't show up on there, then we're good. If county sales tax shows up on it for some reason, we should have that taken off.
And do they split that out though, Vicki? Like I haven't looked at this bill directly, but in my experience with NICEAG, some of these things get chunked in. You have to call and say, tell me exactly what is in this line.
Not I'm sorry, the sales tax that Ben was alluding to before that we had gotten taken care of was a separate line.
Now I'm looking at my NICEAG bill, Jess, and it says county sales tax as a line item.
It's a line item, great. Okay.
So if that shows up on any village electricity bill, that should come off.
Okay. That was the most controversial thing I had to say. So that's it for my fire report. Chief, do you want to add stuff?
I don't have a whole lot to add.
I didn't do the calls. I have the call report. Do you have that in front of you?
I do, yep.
Okay. Why don't you go ahead and read that? Thank you.
Okay, sure. So for December, we had 22 calls total, 7 to the village, 11 to the town of Ulysses, 1 to Covert. Hector got off scot-free with 0. And we had 3 mutual aid. Total hours for the month, 107.47. That was actually man hours on scene. We had 658 training hours. That number seems a little high because it is. We reconciled the entire year's worth of training. So anybody that does outside training or the IFD guys and girls, they give us all their training pretty much at the end of the year, and then we dump it all into the system at once. So the December number you usually see quite high. That gave us total in-service hours so far this year, 765.47 for the month, 228 calls up to date since April 1st. And year-to-date in-service hours is cut off a little bit. It's about 2556 total. There was no new members inducted this month, and we don't have any new operators this month, so all that's level.
Did you want to say anything else?
No, I think I'm all set.
Okay.
I don't think there's a whole lot for me.
Does anyone have any fire-specific questions? No. Check your fire alarms. It's the new year. Check your smoke detectors.
Right.
Okay. Trumansburg Area Chamber of Commerce has a meeting tomorrow morning, so I have nothing new to report as of that meeting there. That's it. That's all I'm going to say. Anything anyone would like me to bring to the chamber meeting tomorrow? Well wishes, support.
I'm sure they would appreciate coffee and donuts.
Virtual coffee and donuts it is. I will get them stickers. Great.
No, I'll just be curious. I'll just be curious to know if and when they have a plan to move forward as an organization, what that might look like.
Yeah, and there has been some community chatter about what it might look like if they do or don't, and pandemic providing, what might happen to pull off what has become some important community events, the Porch Fest and the Winterfest, and how that could be. So people are sort of chattering and keeping me in the loop. So, just excitement and nothing really to say about that. Yeah, be worried, be afraid. That's it.
Okay. If there are no questions for Jessica, we will move on to EMS, Youth, and Street Tree Advisory.
So a pretty light update, but I'll start with the tree committee. We just filed our second Tree City application, which has been hopefully pre-approved. I'm not exactly sure what that means, but basically the state forester said it was okay. It's not up to him for final approval, but his check is, his approval is, hopefully it indicates that we're in the clear there. I don't have much for youth. I did want to mention, this actually happened a couple months ago, but I don't think I've mentioned it, that John Gregory is the new chair of the Youth Commission. I don't know. Hopefully you all have found out about that. I don't know how much the Youth Commission exists in the minds of many people outside of the people who hear these reports directly, but for anyone who knows John, say thank you. He's doing a great job so far. Then for EMS, I realized I was going to bring a recommendation for the rates to this meeting, but Chris and I have had to defer that a little bit, unfortunately, because we're still working on putting together a budget for trying to do some more hospital to hospital transports. So that will be hopefully for next month. And right now, the big thing in the EMS department has been switching to EMS charts, which started a few days ago now, and is going pretty well. There's some hiccups as far as record keeping and auditing that we have to iron out, that we're hopefully going to work with Morgan, or well, Chris will work with Morgan and Vicky about it, hopefully in the next week or two. But yeah, things are going pretty well, and I'll leave it there.
Ben, I had a question. I have a question and a comment. The first comment is that charts program, I think, underwrites some of WSKG. They keep hearing them announced when I listen to WSKG. I was like, oh, what a good decision we made. And then, did you say that there's a little bit of money left in the tree fund?
There's a couple $100. It's not much.
Is it for planting a tree?
It is not specified at this point. Yeah.
Okay. So a small thought was, what if there was a tree that we planted that was always decorated during the holiday season for lights? And instead of purchasing a tree, there was something that we designated as, this is the tree we decorate. It's kind of an interesting concept that somebody brought up to me.
I like that. It would be a little bit of a trick because they get bigger, but that's an interesting
I know. And so the location, where would it be? But I want to say it out loud before I forget about it. And it's Easter and it's completely out of my mind. But I thought it was kind of sweet.
Yeah, I like that.
And frankly, actually, maybe planting it in the spring is not a bad idea for spring renewal. So I'll connect with you offline.
Yeah, that'd be great. We're sort of in the process of trying to plan planting options. So your timing is spot on.
I'm thinking right in front of H&H.
Yeah.
To block the street.
A
nice there, that nice intersection.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Ben.
Ben, let me know about next Tuesday. I sent you an email earlier. If that might work.
Yeah, I haven't actually seen the email, but I don't have anything scheduled for next Tuesday. So whatever it is, yes.
Okay, good. Moving on to PPW, Water, Sewer, CPZR, and Farmers Market.
All right, buckle in. Farmers Market, not much to report there. Things are, I think they're continuing to work through the off season and figure out what's kind of next for them, but I haven't really heard much of an update from them recently. So I'll be checking in to hear about their budget conversations, I'm sure, in a bit here. On the CPZR front, I had hoped to have a final draft of the comprehensive plan for tonight to present to this board. And unfortunately, we have not been able to receive that back from EDR through the holidays and so forth. So I look forward to hearing that, getting that back from them shortly and passing it along here. But as far as the committee is concerned, we are done with that work and ready to pass it off to this board. So this board can kind of continue to take that forward through its final paces. So keep an eye out for that coming up soon. Meanwhile, the committee itself is focused on zoning. We've had a couple of really good conversations around residential zoning. The change of ZBA representative on the board from Scott Sheevely to Noah Demarest has been very helpful. Noah brings a wealth of knowledge in zoning and has been able to give us a lot of really good insight along with EDR. And so we're kind of moving through that. The plan there is to move kind of section by section through the zoning ordinance, gaining feedback from the committee, having EDR kind of mark up changes, and then get Guy's initial take just to make sure we're not wildly off course. He had some horror stories to share of municipalities that have gone well down the path only to check in with him at the very end to find out what they've based their whole plan on is just not legally supportable. So we'll keep in touch with him and look to work on that work as quickly as we can through the course of this year. On the DPW front, a couple of different ongoing projects that I continue to raise here and give updates on. The Cemetery Road Bridge work continues, or the planning work continues. I had a meeting with the town, with Nancy and Michael Boggs and the principal engineer for the project. The plan as it stands now is to run the water main that we would like on the bridge itself, and then kind of gussy it up so it's not an eyesore. The project is continuing to move forward, and with any luck, the plan is to make that project happen this year and try and close that out by the fall. So we should be looking for that work to happen once the building season kind of starts up. The Gregg Street pedestrian bridge is continuing to keep slowly moving forward, but there is progress where I think it's felt more stagnant in previous times. I've been chatting with Alan Vogel, and he's continued to rope in various members of the community. I know Rord's been talking to a couple of folks to see if we can't get someone to help with engineering drawings for the work there, and see if we can start getting that lined up again for sometime in this year's building season as that starts coming up on us. So fingers crossed that we'll have some more news next month on that. The sewer law draft is quite a thing. It's clocking in at about 100 pages, I think, at this point. I know Ben took the effort to read through all of it. God bless your soul. We have responses from MRB, Ben, which I can actually forward on to you that respond to some of your comments. In general, I think we are kind of closing in on the easy 80%. Kind of the boilerplate pieces seem pretty locked in. A couple last questions there, but nothing too surprising. We'll have a couple conversations around how do we bill for sewer. Right now, MRB is suggesting we might look at something to say, essentially billing based on water usage and kind of building a model based on what's the average house use and how does that work out for sewer. But I think there's some pieces we need to continue walk through, and I know Roden and I will talk about that tomorrow. What else is in there? Some talk about grease traps, and I think that's most of the issues that still need hammering out. But there's still some work to be done, so we'll continue to hammer through on that front. And one last piece I will mention that actually didn't get a bullet point. That's my bad. The Village Hall HVAC. We did have Hubbard come by last week to take a look at the heating in the Village Hall. They've taken a look, and we're waiting their kind of write-up and suggestions on that. It'll be interesting to see what they come up with. That building. That's all I can say. I think that's it for my piece, unless anyone has any questions.
Yeah, actually, I was wondering if you might be able to shed some light about the water that was bubbling up in the little houses last week.
I don't have a ton of detail, just to say that it sounds like the water service to the laundromat broke at some point for some reason. And so as folks saw, and that reminds me, I had meant to make a post and that slipped my mind, but I was intending to make a post around that. People might have seen that the houses had to be moved out of the way to get access to the actual main there. But I don't know where it stands right now, but the work is either ongoing or completed to replace the water main to the laundromat there.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, there was a significant break right underneath the children's village, unfortunately. So that's why they had to tear that up to get at that main.
There was a fascinating time-lapse video of it that was on Facebook, and that was what I was waiting for someone, the poster, to say that was good for me to reuse, because I really wanted to share that in the Village Hall Facebook page, and then I lost track of that train of thought. So we'll see if I can pick it up.
Just as a fun little aside, I had a hole in my water service that was the size of a pin that released about 100 gallons a minute. It erupted from my lawn. So, I mean, the amount of water that can go, it's astonishing how small a break is really required.
A lot of water under a lot of pressure. I've said this offline to you, Ben, but I'll say for the sake of posterity and history, please pass along, and I'll do it in person next week, but pass along my thanks to the members of the CPZR committee for all of the work on the revised comp plan. I've seen the draft. It's tremendous, and I certainly know how much work has gone into it, and more or less along the timeline that was initially established, which is tremendous accomplishment, I think. So thanks to you and everyone on the committee that put in lots and lots of hours of lots and lots of proofreading and discussion and so forth, and pleased to see that significant accomplishment made, and onward to the next step.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Next on the agenda is police. Keith.
Good evening. Pretty short update. 294 calls for service during the month of December. 2 calls outside the village assisting the sheriff's department in the town of Ulysses. Some items of note of those calls: 1 assault, 2 larcenies, a trespass, and a harassment. With regards to larceny, you may have seen a post on Facebook. There's been a jump in a string, shall we say, of car break-ins around the county. We had an issue with that last year, if everyone recalls. Cars getting broken into in their driveways went on for maybe a week or 2. So trying to make everyone aware that if anything suspicious looks like it's happening around your streets, to let us know. A couple of these have been broad daylight, people walk into a store, and while they're in the store, someone's going through their car, including Purity ice cream. Somebody was in Purity for 10 minutes and they came out to find their car had been broken into. So don't take anything for granted in your driveways. Lock your cars, put your valuables in the house. Don't leave them in the car. So hopefully we won't see any issues, but it's not uncommon that what we see in the county eventually gets out here.
They made a run down 227 on last Wednesday. My vehicles were involved in that. So it is local.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Matt. Just to be clear, the department continues to keep all COVID-19 safety measures in place, which includes screening individuals prior to entering into the police department and wearing face coverings at all times, and the use of sanitizers and disinfectants. Chief Nelson wanted me to pass on this note from him, in which he states the Office of Chief of Police would like to acknowledge the efforts of Sergeant Peters and Officer Mackenzie Covert for their steadfast commitment to the Trumansburg Police Department and their continued service to the village of Trumansburg community during our frustrating year of 2020. Past year was a tough year for all of us, but Sergeant Peters and Officer Covert stayed resilient for this community, and for that I want to thank them. I greatly appreciate their dedication to the safety and well-being of the Trumansburg community. So that was a note from Chief that he wanted read to the board and to the public. As not much to add on the police meeting front. I have started a bit of a back and forth email thread with the members of the community that have attended our meetings so far, just to keep a dialogue going. We might do some Zooms. Again, the thought has been that even after we make a proposal to Albany, there's enough interest in the topic to keep communication and involvement going. So just trying to keep everyone in the know. If you're listening to this and you weren't in the meetings, but you'd like to be added to that email thread to take part in any of the discussion, I'm happy to add anyone. And with that, I will yield my time to the clerk.
Keith, would you mind sending me that statement from Chief so that I can get it correct, please?
So you can get it correct?
Yes.
Is there a discrepancy?
No, I just don't want to mince his words.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I will forward that on to you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any questions for Keith? Vicky.
I guess the big thing is it's January. We start budgeting. I've talked to the auditor. We should have our fund balances within, I'm going to say, a week to 2 weeks. I know that Gordon really likes to have those before we start the budget season. He does anticipate the audit report being presented in February, at the February meeting, I assume by Zoom. So we'll just have to get him the information. He'll get me the reports. I will scan them and get them all to you. Can someone tell me, was the abstract in the Dropbox?
Yes.
I actually had to put it in the Dropbox for you.
Oh, okay. So for some reason mine's not syncing. I don't know why. Let's see now. I have updated the budget for 21-22. It is in the Dropbox under budget for 21-22. As soon as I close December, I will add the numbers in of anticipated what will be spent by the end of May. And then once January's done, I'll do it again, as we've done it before. I'm going to meet with Dusty and Chief in the next few weeks about their budgets and what we're doing. So hopefully we'll have those numbers. The letters to the library, the Shimmonsburg Community Center, the Historical Society, and FoodNet will go out probably next week for their donations. I'll contact Farmers Market about what they're looking at, so I can give them a date when we need this by. Gordon, a question: do you want to do other meeting dates besides board meetings? Do you want me to put out a doodle for that? Because I don't think we even needed them last year.
For the budget?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely put it out just so we can have some dates.
Okay. So you guys will be getting that in the next couple weeks too. That's kind of my life from now till April is the budget. There's nothing, the phone hardly rings. There's not much going on in the office, that's for sure. I think that's about it that I have.
Any questions for Vicky? I do have one, as we are entering budget season, I do want to at least have on our schedule, the executive order for remote meetings has been extended through the end of January. I do expect it to be extended at least one more month. I have in the back of my mind just an inkling that somewhere in the March, April, May timeframe, we may actually see that lifted depending on vaccine rollout. It would have been a year since meetings were suspended from in-person. I don't think there's lots of statutory arguments when it comes to executive orders, but I don't know that there's a reason why it couldn't be extended further. But I think in the spirit of the open meetings law, you might start to see some pressure to resume meetings. So with that in mind, we have to have a budget ready to adopt by our April meeting. So I would expect that we should plan on starting the budget process with, say, a couple of meetings in February, plus our board meeting, a couple of meetings in March, and we can keep them shorter because we do have, especially if we're meeting remotely, it'll be easier to have more frequent meetings that run less time, and we can kind of block them off as to what we're discussing as we move forward on that. Anything else budget wise? Okay, Tammy, you're up.
Hey, everybody, it's good to see you. I don't have a lot to report. Water bills went out right after the New Year holiday. I guess the question for the board would be, are we gonna still stay with not enforcing penalties and late fees? Because they are due at the end of the month. And by the time we meet in February, the penalties will have needed to be posted. So I will need a decision about that. Right now I'm working on some wage reports for employees that want to buy back some time and trying to clear up some other things that have proved problematic because the New York State retirement system is all working remotely as well. So other than that, the holidays were quiet. I've got some feelers out about a couple of different things. One, getting the village moving forward with some type of scanning program to get all of our files in an electronic format. I have a meeting tomorrow with someone about that. And then I have a meeting next Tuesday with a representative from a company that deals with municipal governments and sending out things like specifically directed statements or media messages, text messages, phone calls that are, they can go out into different types of formats and kind of like our SWIFT program, but more pinpointed. So I've been looking at that. Other than that, I really don't have anything to come back for, except for Morgan. I'm just really appreciative and thankful that she's been able to step in my absence. So thank you all for your continued support. It means a lot. That's all I got.
On the late fees, I believe the last go around, we authorized the waiving of late fees for as long as the governor's state of emergency related to COVID is in effect.
Okay, I must have missed that.
That would continue to apply. I do have some information that I haven't looked at myself yet, but once I've looked at it, I'll pass it along with respect to the system that the school uses for targeted messaging. So the board is aware. I reached out to the school last week to find out what systems they use for their notification systems. Whenever there's an issue at the school, you get a text or an email or a robocall. That does turn out to be school specific. It's a company that works only with school districts, but there is another notification system that they're also using. So I'm going to take a look at that. My intention going forward over the next many months is to work with Keith to work with Morgan to kind of, as the website redevelopment comes along, and then with the use of some type of a notification system. I'm not a fan of listservs, but something that will allow for push notifications and push messaging. Specifically, if we can, I don't know how easy it'll be to set up, but if there is a way to set something up that can target addresses, neighborhoods, streets, there's a water main break on your street, a way to push messages to whatever the desired way that those folks would want to receive the message, whether it's email, text, or phone call. So that's something that I'll be working with Keith to try to put something less 19th century in place in terms of reaching out to folks if we have important information to pass along.
I know that the hope with the Swift 911 is it would be that thing. It might not be working for us, but it'd be great if it could, because I think the county just provides that, if I remember correctly.
Right, and I think one of the problems is with Swift is that you have to sign up for the service. It's not just something that we can control, right, Warden? I mean, that seems to be the biggest downfall. I don't know that it doesn't have the capabilities, but I haven't been shown if it does.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And I haven't gotten as far as looking at the legalities, but I know that with Swift, you have to sign up. There are some vagaries, and it'll end up being a guy question, but there are some vagaries with certain, I think with the law allowing municipal notification. I mean, think emergency broadcast system. You don't sign up, or maybe you do with your cell phone contract in the fine print. But when you get the Amber Alert on your phone, that's not something you have to opt into in order to get. I'm not sure where the line is drawn with pushing information to residents of a municipality. But certainly they have to have the option. I believe they have to have the option to opt out. But I don't know if you have to have them opt in order to send emergency notifications. So we've got to look into that a little bit first. But first, we need to find out where the technology is that'll allow us the most flexibility.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just so much more difficult now with everyone's got cell phones, right? Like if it was landlines, we know what those numbers are. It's one whole thing, right. But yeah, interesting.
Yeah, and I mean, in theory, every village resident, we either have a phone number of some kind on record somewhere. Maybe it's a landline, maybe it's a cell phone, but theoretically we would have a number. And if not, then that's obviously a shortcoming too. So.
I've been trying for years at meetings, and the State of the Village meeting in particular, to gather email and updated mailing addresses and phone numbers, and people just don't seem to want to give those out.
Right.
Always on the sign-in sheet, always.
I know voter files have some of that stuff, but it's mostly people who still have landlines on file. I think it's very few mobile phones these days are probably on that list, but.
Right.
I notice most people do read those nice letters that come from the mayor into their mailbox. So maybe once a system has been decided, we can let people know how they might opt in, and they choose to opt in or don't.
Wake Street has a great artistic representation of the houses and everyone's contact information. Maybe we could duplicate that across the village.
It's become a compound.
And so speaking of, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to second Jess's point of like, if we can't find a good way of getting everyone to pre-sign up and have opt-outs, and I think I do think with a concerted effort of kind of publicity around it and making it a thing, kind of just the regularity and the consistency of the town email, I think breeds its own success in some ways. So maybe that's another kind of angle on it, is to just figure out what it is that we put out regularly that keeps it in people's minds, and they mention, oh, I read it on the thing, and then more people sign up. That something along those lines. We can get creative, I guess.
And frankly, Ben, a good button to add to the new webpage. Once again, a service like want to opt in for local alerts, do it here.
Right. Yeah, I think the new one has a sign up for the email list, but that's a good point. Is like calling out even Swift 911 for now, and then whatever we move to, if we do in the future, would be a good point as well.
Just as a point of talking about it, CMC, I just looked it up because I couldn't remember the name, but CMC and Skylar were invested into a company called Rave Mobile. It's a mass notification, and they gear it towards healthcare for us, but they can do governments, universities, municipalities, counties, whatever. So, I mean, if you're looking for some avenues, I probably could get you some information out there that, a lot of people don't like it. because they don't know what's going to be coming across it. And that's what we get at the hospitals per se, is everybody's like, well, what are you going to send me? Like every time a bird flies into the window, or you're going to really, and so you got to be careful about what you push out, because people will tune off pretty quickly if it's things that really don't seem to be that pertinent. So being able, I know this system here, you can specifically send it to certain people. You can set up certain demographics. Let's say it's only nurses, like you need to recall nurses. So you push it just to nurses instead of the whole hospital, or your facilities crew for a snowstorm or something of that nature. So I think this system in particular could break it down into a street or a locale or a quadrant of the village or something of that nature. So those systems do exist.
Okay, good. Well, the next item is the website refresh. So good segue if we want to just get an update on that, Ben.
Yeah, real quick on the website. It is basically all but done. The last piece I was chatting with him today is getting some of the old news items over so that there's just a consistency between the old site and the new one, and that there's something in that list of things. So I imagine they've been very responsive. I imagine that will be done this week. At which point I kind of think, well, I'd like to get people's take on it, but I'm of the mind that we just kind of switch over and figure out the details as we go. I'd rather not just kind of sit on it. And it kind of would get inevitably kind of more and more out of date as we add more stuff to the existing website. You have to kind of add it in two places or it gets out of sync. So I think unless there's strong opposition, I'd like to push that way. So the last pieces I have in my mind is a training, which we've got scheduled for Wednesday, that I think Keith and Morgan, myself will be able to be at, and Tammy and Roden are invited if they're able to make it as well. And what else do I have here? But I think that's it. And then once we kind of get that over, then we can kind of start, adding to it. The idea is to kind of get a first pass in. And then as we have ideas, notice things that need improvement. Obviously we could do a lot of our own kind of general edits and copy ourselves, but I know I've been talking with them to slowly start moving some of our forms into a digital format that could email out to, Tom or Tammy or whoever is the right kind of person for each form. Some of that kind of stuff we can start working on, but the first hurdle is just to switch over to the new one so we can start moving from there.
Can I be invited to the training?
Sure. Yes.
Just looking for something here. One of the things I think that will hopefully dovetail nicely with this is on my list, but it got kind of tabled last spring thanks to COVID, is once we have, I had asked Tammy, when she mentioned it earlier, I had asked Tammy last year to look into finding, one of these large scale commercial scanning companies to come in and digitize all of the files upstairs of the village office. If you've ever wandered into that back room off of where my meeting office area space is, I mean, there are files that go back to the 50s and 60s in paper. And, God forbid the fire takes that out. There's no getting some of those records back. So it'll be, I'm sure, several $1,000s of time. But if we can find a company that can digitize all of that, and then we can, I wouldn't say we necessarily even need to get rid of the paper, but we can, not worry about what happens if it's not there anymore. In conjunction with that happening at some point and the new website, there is a company, I think they're out of Rochester, eCode 360, that actually they do the work of turning local law, they batch local laws into a tabulated code type of system, which would require a local law to establish a village code as opposed to a number of different village laws, but would certainly make things very easy to look up, cross-reference, search. So that's kind of, well, spring of 2020 is when I started to think about it. So it'll be a couple of years worth of of getting that done, but hopefully we're headed in that direction. Once we have the underpinnings of it with the website and some digitized documents, then the last step will be the codifying all our local laws, and then hopefully we'll be able to have it all hosted in a resident and user-friendly searchable format.
I'll point out that that kind of vision is also called out in the comprehensive plan as under the umbrella of making government more accessible to people, more easy to kind of navigate, and more transparent. So I think that's definitely a call out there.
Good.
And how are new files being stored? So we have a backlog of paper files. Has the process still the same, or are we using cloud storage? We have database storage.
I mean, hard copy stuff is still stored the same. I have the RMU manual, which is basically the state retention manual. So a lot of stuff we still have to retain even after we scan it in and we get it electronic.
So we have both those. So like something new happens and it gets scanned in process as well as the hard copy being retained.
Yeah, so if something comes in hard copy, I keep a copy of it in my computer filed in, and then the hard copy is filed per protocol.
Cool.
And
there's
stored
great backup
upstairs
processes for those, those data.
Yeah.
So before we move off that, are there any strong objections to the idea of switching over to the new website once we've got the training done and the data finished porting over?
I think that's totally the right move. I agree.
I do have a question, and it may be something that you and I can talk about later, Ben.
Sure.
You referred to the email, signing up for the email list.
Yeah.
Will this account be linked to our MailChimp account?
I believe so. I'll double check that, but I'm pretty sure it's exactly the same form that's on the front page, just kind of buried down deep. It's just presented a little more nicely.
Okay.
But I'll double check that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And Ben, will we have final approval of the graphics that are displayed in terms of pictures? Which pictures are going to be on the homepage and whatnot? Because there are a lot of people waiting for this website, and we saw a lot of different kinds of photos in the preliminary drafts, some of which were kind of scary.
I would say the one that's up at the website that I've been sharing around and check for one of those email links. Those are the pictures that will show up when we switch.
Okay.
We absolutely have the right to change any of that whenever we'd want before or after we make the switch. I've handed over a number of photos in the past couple of weeks, so I do know some of them are somewhat newer, but take a look if there's something that jumps out.
There were definitely, and when we looked earlier, there were some beautiful ones, and then there were some that were less attractive. So I did get that email. I'll go back and look and know that this is the intention to be finalized. Yeah.
We're at the final pieces now. So if you see something that looks off, let us know.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Tammy, please make sure that Morgan can attend that training. I want to make sure she's available. I'm going to try to make it. I actually have a consortium executive committee meeting at 3:30, so I'll be able to be there for at least a half hour, but I'll probably need someone to go over whatever's gone over, or I can pick it up later. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, I believe that Morgan has already confirmed that time works for her and was part of the scheduling to begin with. I will not be able to make it, so I will have to catch up.
And please make sure, and I was going to tell her if she was here, please impress on, I'll actually see her tomorrow, but, impress on her that I do want her to become as comfortable and versed in editing the site as she can be, primarily for updating news type information and that, content.
Yep.
I'll also see if we can't record that. I didn't double check, but I'm pretty sure that's over Zoom, and I'll see if we can't get that recorded.
That would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, it looks like it's a Zoom link. Yeah, that'd be helpful actually, Ben, because Lord knows what my day will look like between everything else and that consortium meeting.
Sure.
Anything else under old business?
Actually, yeah, could you remind me where we are with deciding the state of the village timing?
We had tentatively left it for an attempt at a May weekend.
Okay.
And we are going to try to find a weekend in May that isn't Mother's Day and isn't Memorial Day. And I don't know, Matt, were you here for that? We were making plans for you, Matt. We were going to try to do a.
I heard about the plans. Yes, Jessica filled me in.
Okay, so yeah, we were looking at a May weekend, and the more I think about it, the more I like it. I think if we're still assuming or guessing that we'll probably still be in some version of social distancing, if not required, at least desirable, then perhaps having it at the farmers market, along with some type of, well, there's a Wi-Fi drop there, so we can have Zoom available as well for folks who can't attend in person. And then I really would like to see if we can't do a chicken barbecue fundraiser in the DPW parking lot area at the end. So if we go 9 to 12 for State of the Village and chicken is ready by noon, that'll keep us from going over too far because the smell will drag us away.
That's right.
And then have that fundraiser be done by the fire company so that they can begin what will hopefully be a multi-month celebration of their 70th anniversary, which is this June.
Yep.
Did you have a chance to talk to Tim about that yet? No, right? Because I just cut off
I
with you.
did not, no.
Yeah. Okay. We just talked about that
I
recently.
want to know the date when we solidify it, and then I can really start to drive home the plans.
Okay. And then
That'll
so
be
Gordon,
the first thing they say is when is it? And
right.
it's always the first question. So.
And Gordon, to that end, do we need to maybe let people know not to anticipate a meeting in February as they look at the long, bleak, other shades of gray out their morning windows? That bright spot that was the village meeting.
I have planned, I'm putting together notes for my next intermittent Facebook post, and I was going to do a no state of the village, no winter state of the village, look for a date in May and then kind of do a very brief 2020 in review, as if any of us really want to look back at it anyway, kind of post from the village's perspective, for those folks who are used to catching up on village goings on in the winter.
Great. That's great. Thank you so much.
Anything else under old business? Any items of new business? Okay, if there's no items of new business, then our second public comment period would be available if Matt or Ann, I suppose, have anything they want to say other than official business. If not, then I would entertain a motion to go into executive session to discuss a couple of personnel issues as well as potential legal contractual issue.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, everyone. I'm going to sign off.
Okay. Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Matt. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 That was Keith and Jessica.
Aye.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Let me stop the recording.
Ann's
night,
still
everybody.
logged in.
Uh-oh. Thanks for coming, Miss Ann.